The beginning of the journey, the father's book was not a big part of it. When I started the book, I was in the MFA program at LSU. This book was my thesis. And the original book was quite different from the one that would be published almost, I think it was 8 years later that it came out. So the original version was sort of I call it a magical realist meander. It didn't have a genre. It didn't even really have a clear through line. The house was always there. It was about this woman who has this blank spot in her memory, and she knows something happened there at Frank's house. So that was always the story. But it wasn't until I found my agent who helped me develop the story and flesh out not just the sort of like the genre aspects, but also the personal aspects. My character had always been half Guatemalan, like I am. But in the book, I had not really spent a lot of time delving into that or delving into her sort of journey towards understanding her own culture, which she's been severed from because her father was killed before she was born. So that was always there, but I hadn't really brought it to the surface or explored it in the kind of depth that I eventually would in the version that was published. But those were all things that kind of came along the way. So Maya Edwards is a 25-year-old woman living in Boston. She went to BU. She is living with her boyfriend. They've been living together. They're very serious, but she has a secret. And the secret is that she has been taking Klonopin, an anti-anxiety medication, in order to sleep and in order to sort of drown out the horrible memories that she has of her best friend Aubrey's death. Her best friend died 7 years ago. Maya believes that a man named Frank killed her, but she can't prove it. She can't even say how he did it. And no one believes her. So she's in this position where she's had to begin questioning her own sanity. And to deal with all that, she's taking Klonopin, but she's become addicted and her boyfriend doesn't know about it. So when we were first meeting her, she's just been cut off from the person who sells her the Klonopin. She's begun going through withdrawal, which is something that I know about because I went through withdrawal and was in fact going through withdrawal when I started writing the book. But that process of going through withdrawal makes her an unreliable narrator, essentially, because the withdrawal symptoms can be so extreme. It can cause anxiety, insomnia. In extreme cases, it can cause hallucinations and seizures. So she is sort of on the extreme end of that, the withdrawal, and trying to sort of figure out what happened all those years ago. In the video that Maya sees that's gone viral, it comes to her attention because it's gone viral. She sees a young woman sitting across from Frank, her ex, who she thinks killed her best friend. And this young woman is just listening to him talk, just listening to him talk. And then suddenly she falls over dead. And this is exactly what happened to her best friend 7 years ago. So she's convinced that he did something. He must have killed her. How could two young women drop dead while talking to the same man? He never touches her, but somehow he must have done it. So that's what the video brings up for her, is this conviction that there's more than meets the eye in the video, and she wants to figure out what it is. Guatemala was always part of the story because she's half Guatemalan, because I am. You write what you know, and as I started to develop the Guatemalan story, there were parallels that existed. As you're pointing out, it almost was like side by side, because both of these places, the country of Guatemala and the city of Pittsfield, were hugely impacted by the corporate interests that took advantage of the people, of the natural resources, and left behind a devastation in their wake. So I've talked a little bit about how GE, they left quite a destructive legacy in Pittsfield. But at the same time about that, I do want to be careful to say that there are a lot of people in Pittsfield who had long, fulfilling careers at GE. So I'm not saying that GE ruined Pittsfield or anything like that. A lot of people are very proud to have worked there. It's extremely complicated. The situation in Guatemala, I think, is less complicated. It was greed. It was the United Fruit Company, which is today known as Chiquita Banana. So they've rebranded, but they're still the same company. The United Fruit Company wanted to grow cheap bananas in Guatemala because of the very fertile land. But what this entailed was kicking people off the land, or not allowing them, maintaining this sort of authoritarian rule where the land could not be redistributed to the people to live there, who needed to live there and farm there, because it was being used by the United Fruit Company to grow their bananas. And so when a newly elected president in Guatemala tried to redistribute some of that land to the people who had lived there for generations, millennia, they claimed communism, and RCIA was in fully support of that. RCIA helped the Guatemalan government overthrow their democratically elected government to protect the interests of the United Fruit Company. So as I was writing about GE and what happened in Guatemala, I started to think, wow, these are kind of the same things. Here you have these big corporations who take and take and take and take, and people are the ones who are left to pay or left holding the bill. So I didn't even really think about those two things as existing side by side until I started writing about it. And then I was like, yeah, these are both stories of greed, or people suffering from the greed of large corporations. So the father was a writer in Guatemala who had been working on his first book. He was young, in his 20s, when he was assassinated by the Guatemalan military. And this is something that happened a lot. This is something that happened a lot back then. And so I was kind of telling the story of a lot of different people when I created that father character. That was really fun, bringing that to life. And there was no real life model of that. It was more the sort of archetypal little cabin in the woods. I think the closest sort of tangible inspiration would be the witch's house, the witch's cabin in Hansel and Gretel. Because it looks like what they're looking for. These are two children lost in the woods, starving to death, and they see this house made of candy. So it looks like exactly what they want. It looks like it's going to save them, but it ends up being a trap. And I've always kind of liked that that archetype of this place that draws you in and then kills you. It's a dangerous place, but it's also a beautiful place. It can be a homey place, and there can be a very deceptive sort of glow of nostalgia around it. And so that's what I was thinking of when I crafted his cabin, more so than any actual place. So Frank Bellamy, who Maya falls in love with, he's slightly older. He is not who he appears. He's hiding some very dark secrets. Without giving too much away, because the way that he kills these women is part of the twist, so I don't want to give that away. But I will say that I've never read another book where a character utilizes the sort of killing method that he does. He does something that I think is unexpected. Most people are surprised by the twist, although of course there's always some people who swear they saw it coming. In my experience, most people are surprised by the twist because what he does is something that we haven't really seen, that I've never seen before in a story. I think the dual timeline was really important because I was able to, hopefully what I tried to do was make sure that I provided enough information in the past storyline so that by the time she meets him in the present age storyline, there's a lot of dread built up around him. So I think that the sort of dual timeline was really helpful in being able to establish the necessary dread around Frank. It was incredible. It was one of the best things that's ever happened in my whole life. I didn't know that my book was being considered for Reese's book club. So when I got a call from my editor saying, hey, could you jump on Zoom with me and your agent? I didn't know if it was good or bad. So I get on the Zoom call, and when they told me, I was shocked. I had no idea it was being considered. I didn't know that, the book wasn't completely finalized yet. I mean, the book was fine. Sorry, you're going to have to edit this. The book was finalized, but it had not been copy edited, I don't think, or something. It was still early on in the process. So I thought it was way too early for anything like that. And I was completely shocked. And, I cried when I got off the Zoom. And I was just so grateful that Reese Witherspoon, an actress who I've grown up watching and loving, the idea that she sat down with my book, I still get chills when I think about that, when I imagine her reading my book. It really was the best thing that could have happened because it introduced my book to an amazing crowd of people. And I think book clubs are great because the whole reason for a book club is to get people talking. So you're giving them this book to talk about, and it allows them to really, delve in and think about the themes and think about all those little touches that as the writer you add, and you wonder if people are going to appreciate or talk about it. And now you're getting this like immediate feedback from an amazing community of readers. So that'll always be, one of the best moments of my life when I found out.